We live. Logan, what's up, man?
What's up?
Chilling, man. So we got a couple minutes before this debate starts. We're about to do this watch along. Hope y'all are excited about it. Logan, are you excited about it?
Super excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear from Mike Pence.
Mike Pence, yeah, he's pretty close to you from Indiana, not too far away.
Yeah, don't remind me. Yeah, he's definitely around the way, but not necessarily your most engaging speaker, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, Kamala Harris represents my current state, California, so that's
yeah. we repping Cali.
We repping Cali. Let's go.
That boy, something like a Cali resident. All right, I'm not mad. Man. Yeah, but we're waiting for some of our co-hosts to jump on here, so we'll just hold down the fort for a little bit. And I know our viewers ain't here to hear baseball banner, but we were talking about some baseball. I'm just praying. Just say a prayer for my Yankees. Anybody from New York here? I know my boy Donnell is probably in here live from NY. Say a prayer for us, dog. It's not looking good right now.
I'd say a prayer. I'm trying to say though, like, what are you expecting from tonight between Kamala, Mike Pence? Like, how do you think this thing's gonna play? It looks like they're sitting down at this debate, which is interesting. They got like a plexiglass thing, so COVID can't turn corners, I guess. I don't know how.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And Danny's joining us. Danny, what's up?
Hello.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, we're just kind of talking about our feelings for how tonight's gonna go. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I did hear in the run up that some folks from Pence's side were kind of pushing back on them using the plexiglass, like he didn't want them to do it, and it's the whole like alternative fact, COVID rule, world or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So the Gabe Morales is in here, talking about my Yankees. We're not gonna one more of those you getting booted from the chat, bro. So that's what that is. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I haven't heard Mike Pence say much probably since the last time he was in a debate, which I don't even think I watched the debate with him and Kane in 2016.
Wow.
So I just don't really know what to expect from him. I expect Kamala to be extremely well prepared and to, she's masterful. She had some great moments during the presidential debates of really putting people on the spot and backing them in corners and things like that. So, I definitely expect her to, have some of those moments prepared for Pence, and it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to it.
Mm-hmm.
But what do y'all think? How y'all feeling?
I'm just hoping that it's better than the presidential debate. Yeah, it's a little bit more like adults talking, so
that would be good. That would definitely be a plus.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm kind of looking for. I'm just excited for America to see what two. So I'm going to give Mike Pence some credit of being like a human. Donald Trump not being a human, I'm going to give him the ability to allow Kamala to say words and not just attack her verbally. I don't agree with about anything that Mike Pence is, but he is a representative of a Republican Party that at least may have trash ideologies, but just respect for humans, I think exists to a degree. So I just look forward to Kamala destroying a person that might respect her. That's kind of what I'm looking for right now.
Conversation, man. That's really what I think America misses, because for the last 4 years we've had a leadership that on every level failed to display any form of civil discourse, the ability to just disagree without like you don't have to give up your passion for your subject. Like you also don't have to like, I don't know, name call, just be blatantly disrespectful. Just throw a bunch of talking points that have been debunked on several occasions. So it's like, there's nothing you can make of things that Trump says, because you either have to completely ignore him, letting people believe what he's saying is true, or you spend the entire time trying to fact check him, which does not always go well, as we saw in the last debate, because he's just going to cut you off anytime anyways. So I think Pence doesn't strike me as a person that's going to do what Trump did, just the constant cutting off. But I mean, his views are still trash. So it's like, I don't know. Like, what's the point of having civil discourse if the person you're having the conversation with is spewing like harmful rhetoric still? So I'm always conflicted with that.
I think it's going to be interesting because I feel like Trump's antics kind of let him off the hook of actually having to answer questions a lot of the time. Or like, you know, like when he's given a direct question or he's challenged directly, he can sidestep it with all the stuff that he does. So I think it'll be interesting to see what is Pence going to do, because there's a lot of things that it appears that they either don't really have a plan at all, have one that doesn't make sense, that doesn't hold up. And I feel like Trump has just been avoiding that by being Trump. Like what?
This is loud. How do I turn this
Not me, is it? Oh, that's you, Logan?
That's me. No one ever calls me, but then I guess.
People trying to check in on the boy. No, sorry, Esther, you were finishing your point, or you had something.
Oh no,
else?
I was done. No,
Yeah.
I was done.
All right, looks like it's starting to get underway. Let me throw on the audio here.
To the first and only vice presidential debate.
Y'all can hear it okay?
Sponsored by the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm Susan Page of USA Today. It is my honor to moderate this debate, an important part of our democracy. In Kingsbury Hall tonight, we have a small and socially distant audience, and we've taken extra precautions during this pandemic. Among other things, everyone in the audience is required to wear a face mask, and the candidates will be seated 12 feet apart. The audience is enthusiastic about their candidates, but they've agreed to express that enthusiasm only twice, at the end of the debate and now when I introduce the candidates. Please welcome California Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence.
Look at this dude.
Thank you. Oh, the red power tie, I see.
Okay, got to.
Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete recovery and for the recovery of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus. The two campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for tonight. I'm here to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching. One note, no one in either campaign or at the Commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask. This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption by me or the other candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots? A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Thank you, Susan. Well, the American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said, you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that Joe Biden has and that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that. And frankly, this administration has forfeited their right to re-election based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
Mercy.
Vice President Pence, more than 210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you.
Civility.
And our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China, President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II.
Our first side-eye.
And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resource and support they needed. And we began really before the month of February was to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe will have literally tens of millions of doses of a vaccine before the end of this year. The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way.
No.
I mean, quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine,
We about to cook
it's a
him.
little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden
Facts.
knows a little bit
We
about.
about to cook
He
him.
said plagiarism.
People know that this is a president who has put the
Thank you,
health
Vice
of America first, and the American people, I believe with my heart, can be
Thank you,
proud
Vice
of the
President.
sacrifices they have made. It's saved
Thank you.
countless American lives.
Senator Harris, would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked.
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country, American lives that have been lost, families that are grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force
There we go.
and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward,
Right.
we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
So I
back.
don't know, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to
have
add,
to
but
weigh in
if,
here.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
weigh in.
speaking.
Yeah, you
So
can have
I
15 more
wanna-
seconds, and then we'll give the vice president.
Thank you. How calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get the next roll of toilet paper? How calm were
I'm
you
sorry, I thought I was muted.
when you went home from school and you didn't know when they could go back? How calm
Thank
were
you.
you
Thank
when
you,
your
Senator
children
Harris.
couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to
You know,
respond.
there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one.
Oh, comforting.
And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts
Hmm.
and in our prayers.
They can't hear you.
When you say what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked, that's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made.
I'm referring
The
to
reality, if I may finish, Senator, the reality is Dr. Fauci said everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd get through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. But that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also
Thank you,
said
Vice
to us, if we
President
did
Pence.
everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice
Now,
President
one
Pence.
life lost is
Thank
too
you.
many, Susan. But the American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their neighbors first, our doctors, our nurses, our first
Thank you, Vice
responders.
President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the American people
All right.
Vice President Pence, you were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago at what seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration.
There we go.
No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first. And President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day, we surged resources to New Jersey and New York and New Orleans and Detroit. We told the American people what needed to be done, and the American people made the sacrifices. When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. The reality is the work of the President of the United States goes on. A vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney
Yes,
Barrett.
thank you. Thank you, Vice
But at
President Pence.
that, if I may say, that Rose Garden event, there's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested
Yes.
for coronavirus. And it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is
You don't have
President
no
Trump
math,
trusts the American people to make choices in the best interest of their health. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris consistently talk about mandates, and not just mandates with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care,
Thank you.
the Green New Deal, all government control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American
What does that have to do with what?
The American people.
I brought up Green
You
New
respect the
Deal.
American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader,
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people. So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked about
It is
this.
asking too much of the people. That they would not be equipped with the information they need to help themselves to protect
Susan,
their parents
President-
and their
I'm
children.
sorry. Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's fine, I'm Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me. For life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now.
What?
If the
Oh,
Trump
now.
administration
Okay.
approves a
I got
vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
No.
There have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential ability? And if not, do you think you should? You have
25th Amendment or no?
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back. But I would like to go back.
He said, I ain't touching that player.
The reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time. In unheard of
record
less
time.
than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trials. And we're right now
really?
producing tens of millions.
Is he breaking
of doses.
news?
So the fact that you continue to
I
undermine
was like,
confidence in a vaccine
there's no proof of this.
emerges during the Trump administration, right, is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives.
Doctors say it's okay.
The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is just, it's just
answer the
unacceptable.
question asked,
And let me
bro.
also
What happened to
say,
the rules?
You know, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009.
Here we go.
What is the lie again?
Thankfully, it was.
The fact that we can barely even remember that
Exactly.
is proof in and of itself.
How many people died, fam?
Nobody even talks about it.
To the point where when we first heard about COVID, we thought it was fake because the last time we thought something was going to happen.
We were good.
60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief
So
of staff
so hypotheticals now.
would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but
2009.
I think the American people can be
Vice
proud
President Pence, I'm sorry,
of
your
what
time
we
is
have
up.
done. And Senator, please
Thank you, Vice
stop
President
undermining
Pence.
confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice
I
President
didn't even answer the question.
about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability?
I'd like to
And
hear
if
the
not,
current vice
and if you win
president
the
answer
election
that.
next
That'd be
month,
great.
do you think you
Completely
should?
dodged
With
it.
the
Interrupted.
president that has COVID.
Yeah.
The day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket. Was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19, gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now, I know would make her proud. And she must be looking down on this. Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about the value and the dignity of public service, and about the importance of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and Black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners to for-profit colleges that were taking advantage of veterans. And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second Black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee,
That's
where
crazy,
I've been in
dog. Only
regular
the second.
receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose, which is about lifting up the American people. And after the 4 years that we have seen of Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released a sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the president and the first lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayer
We've all.
for the president. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the president received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination. I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year. And the stakes have never been higher, but I think the choice has never been clearer.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond to the same question I asked, which is, do voters have a right to know more detailed health information about presidential candidates and especially about presidents, especially when they're facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely. And that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes. We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000?" And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander in Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know what is influencing the president's decisions. And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you, or self-interest? So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
The American people have a president who's a businessman, he's a job creator, who's paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. He's created tens of thousands of American jobs. And the president said those public reports are not accurate. And the president also released literally
not like he ever lies.
Financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice
And
President.
turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation, unleashing
Vice
American
President.
energy, fighting for free and fair trade, and all of that's
Thank
on
you,
the
Vice
line
President.
if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, that's a good
away.
segue into our third
Great
topic,
segue.
which is about the economy. This has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled. And that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, Blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for. On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that. He'll invest in infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were a leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family that makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about the economy, which is it's about investing in the people of our country as opposed to passing a tax bill, which had the benefit of letting American corporations go offshore to do their business.
Thank you,
You're
Senator
welcome.
Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been predicting a rapid and robust recovery, but the latest economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. So when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of four had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, the average household income for a family of four increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think. I mean, right after a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height, we've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, fought for free and fair trade, and secured $4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families, save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally have spared no expense to help the American people and the American worker through this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland. And Joe Biden wants to go back to the economic surrender to China, that when we took office,
China,
the trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth and opportunity, 4 more years of President Donald Trump. 2021 is going to be the biggest economic year in the history of this country.
Ever.
How can you promise that with no plan to solve the
In last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact. And the truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
Repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well,
Speaking.
the important is you said the truth. Joe Biden.
We listened to all that crap you said without saying nothing. What you mean?
That was tax cuts that gave the average worker.
This is literally her time, bro. Come on, moderator.
Every single year.
That is,
Senator,
that is
that's the math.
absolutely not true. That
Is he only cutting? Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cut?
Dog,
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation. Okay?
Please.
Okay.
He said, please, like he didn't interrupt her.
Anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who, during the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but we need to get Vice President.
He interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish.
Thank you.
If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Senator Harris, thank you. Let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care, because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well. President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care. And
would you like to see a poll that says different?
Conditions for every American.
They have no.
That 80% acceptance.
They
don't want it.
Your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Oh, he Moynihan now.
On occasion that you were running for president, that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal.
Wasn't that
more taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now will continue with 4 more years of President Donald Trump.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation.
What if they believe it or not?
According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. Our water is among the cleanest in the world. And just a little while ago, the president signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years. So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment. Now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. The issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation. And we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center. And even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice
to work on
President.
forest
more
management.
Breaking
Breaking.
But many of the climate alarmists
President
use
Pence, sorry, your time
hurricanes
is up.
and wildfires to
Right,
try
right.
to keep
Vice
the bill of
President,
goods of
yes.
a Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put
Thank you,
American
Vice
jobs and
President,
American
yes.
workers first.
Senator Harris, as the Vice President mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress. But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa, whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We follow the science.
He said it's about to be winter.
Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice.
He literally just
on day
he
one,
keeps shifting, bro. I'm so mad.
Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out, the Green New Deal is on their campaign website. And as USA Today said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate.
Why is this a thing?
And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit America to the Paris Climate Accord. Look, the American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us to retrofit 4 million American
Vice
business buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost
Retrofits?
jobs. President Trump put America first. He's going to put jobs
Where are
first.
we,
He's gonna
bro?
Take care of our environment and follow the science.
Thank you,
But, on the issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. He lost that trade war.
Yep.
He lost it. What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy because of it. We are in a manufacturing recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old who are coming out of high school and college right now. And you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month.
There's no jobs anywhere.
Are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond, because then I
No way.
Well,
You only use 15 seconds.
Look, lost the.
The guy said fracking.
Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China through over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs. President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, this administration saw 500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through this pandemic.
Saying thank you is not.
It's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I just need to respond very briefly.
15 seconds. And
Thank you. Thank you.
These 45, 15 seconds.
Is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China. We have as our next topic.
Okay, give me 15. I'll only use 5.
More consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. You know, knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close.
Why do we even have moderators at this?
Yo, bro,
talk about
to renegotiate now. In the United States,
I'm tired of this.
It's now the law of the land.
The constant pivoting, dude.
No. Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. The American people deserve to know that. It's probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019. More liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now with regard to China, look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus. And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel from China. He said it was hysterical. He said it was xenophobic. But President Trump has stood up to China. We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold China accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden.
Let's talk about
For example, they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got away, they got rid of it.
Not true.
There was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief of the United States. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. You got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, you got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So Russia, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO. He's walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia Pacific. And we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader, al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family said, with heart that broke the heart of every American, that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice President.
We destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor of terrorism. President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad to do harm to Americans, President Donald Trump took him
you, Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer. Our allies are safer. And the American people know President Donald Trump will never have
you, Vice President
take action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length, because of course there are other topics we want to talk about.
But you just let him talk for 5 minutes.
That's wild.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because of course, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take what he said about John McCain, a great American hero. And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that. Joe Biden would, but Joe Biden.
Yeah, you better not cut her off right now.
Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And Susan, I want to make sure we have a chance.
I really have
talk
to respond
about,
to that. Look,
no, you don't have time.
Because
I got to have
trying to keep.
That. Look,
I'm sorry, Vice President, but you've had more time than she's had
the
so far.
Slanders against President Donald Trump regarding men and women of our armed forces.
Y'all can't control these white men. Is that the thread here, that white men can't be controlled by moderators?
Thanks, bro.
I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Vice President Pence,
people deserve, Susan.
Vice President Pence, I did not, excuse me,
Susan,
I did not create the rules for tonight.
Joe Biden.
Your campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which involves
Republicans don't follow rules.
Giving roughly equal time to both of you, which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move.
All right, good job. All right, good job, moderator. First time of the night. Thank you.
And that is the Supreme Court. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned,
to be the former vice president,
would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of American service members. When the opportunity came to kill more Americans, President Trump didn't hesitate. And Qasem Soleimani is gone.
You trying to talk dirty to the vice president who sat there when Osama bin Laden was killed?
The decision to take out
Wait, so he went back to the other question again?
It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden.
But he also knows they're just going to let him talk. That's kind of annoying.
That we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others, but we hope she gets a fair hearing.
How about Merrick Garland?
We particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees, you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views. And
thank you, Vice President.
So
your
my
time
hope
is
is that when the hearing takes place,
that's outrageous.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected.
Thank you, Vice President.
Voted and confirmed.
I didn't even talk about. I don't even know.
You're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed.
Your credentials,
Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as president of the United States. On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. Mm-hmm. And, before, when this conversation has come up, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Thank you, Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator.
That's true
Harris.
leadership.
You know, you mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect
Ken's going to say, let's talk about
access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
We don't know.
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just.
His plan was struck down already.
I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life.
That was last question, fam.
I don't apologize for it.
That's okay. That's fine.
This is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic.
Yeah, because Trump's the only guy that would have picked this fool for VP.
Taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. For our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule.
Oh, my bad.
But we'll continue to stand strong for the right to. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed at the Supreme Court of the United States.
You said nothing about pre-existing conditions.
Somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court.
Who's the moderator?
I'm so
Mike
glad
Pence?
we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
Let her speak.
Oh, you'd like her to answer your question. You just didn't answer the debate question.
One of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume if you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election. And it was 27 days before the election. And a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge, not only of the White House, but the Senate.
Let's go.
But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now. And it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body. for a lifetime.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
People, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once again gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
the
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and women,
I avoid questions and ask questions and answers questions.
If
This is something else, bro.
you need to
This is
reject
something
the
else.
Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump.
Shut up, dude.
9-seat.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So
She said you got one more
the
time to do
Trump-Pence
that.
administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned,
One more
and I've
time.
witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is Black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial.
Easy.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question.
Bruh.
Maybe the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question, but I think the American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President.
Does he think he's the moderator? What?
Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require a national registry for police officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and we will decriminalize marijuana, and we will expunge the records of those who have been convicted of marijuana. This is the time for leadership on a tragic issue of unarmed Black people in America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you.
I'm triggered.
In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of innocent any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. Justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and the looting.
Right on time.
I mean, it really is astonishing. Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon, was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist. And that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult.
Oh my goodness.
Well, statistics.
Who puts on the uniform.
He got a flyer in his head.
It is remarkable.
Oh my goodness.
That when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill.
Tim Scott, here he comes.
Republicans and Democrats.
The token.
Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new repeat.
My guy is a corpse. He has a flyer on his head.
Law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and is improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice President.
Record unemployment, record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our members.
Thank you, Vice
I'd
President.
like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who was personally prosecuted. Everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges for taking advantage of our veterans. And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week, the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Yes, he did.
And it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed,
the fly is not moving.
Stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. On the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed. And on the other side, there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the president of the United States. In America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country together,
Senator Harris,
and recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we all have so much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you.
Oh, he gets a minute?
Very much.
Oh, wow.
You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did.
Yo, we all heard
President
the debate.
Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects.
His dad was in the KKK.
People. But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were
wish you had more time
in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney General of California, you increased the disproportionate incarceration of blacks.
Racism does or doesn't exist.
Criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to pass the first.
You've been talking to Michelle Alexander all of a sudden? Okay.
The reality is your record speaks for itself.
Jim Crow, all right.
Fought.
This is what's so frustrating.
Fought for educational choice.
Which one is it, Pence? Does it exist or not exist? And
there's no more
Kamala is a racist.
than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election itself.
He attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of
I
time.
appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holes.
Thank you.
Not only,
Thank you, Senator.
I would like to go through.
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
But I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do.
So she can't go back.
Include
Only Mike.
the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias, because yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President on our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe, and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power. And if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do?
I'm a pack and move.
First and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years.
This guy, you're an established GOP.
Has launched a movement of everyday Americans.
He acting like he's new to politics.
And, I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military. We revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for
Economy in the trash, bro.
American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last 4 years. When you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election.
So we also impeached him.
When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the president of the United States over a phone call.
Successfully.
Clinton actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. We have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be rereelected for 4 more years.
My name's Logan, Cody.
I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight. But for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along?" And then she added, "Your examples could make all the difference to bring us together," end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. And in America, we believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. Now, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States, one very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the 2 of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument, but we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you.
In times of need. And we've especially learned that through the difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be. That is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him, like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. I mean, you have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has known love. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. It will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your work and through eventually your vote to determine the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us then. Good evening.
Like Pence said, now I don't got to talk for 4 more years.
I'm sorry. They're not messed up. They didn't decide to make a different decision.
Boom, right? Like it's something that's symbolic and easy like that. Just put on a mask. Like, yeah.
They still said no. They're not gonna do that.
Won't put it on.
That's really, really crazy.
All right. Well, I guess we'll keep this up for a little bit just in case there's some visuals or anything, but hopefully there's no real interaction because they shouldn't be interacting. But yeah, that's a big fact, yo.
It's also wild how they were giving Kamala a hard time with just putting up the plastic glass in between the two. And I'm like, that seems like such a logical request, seeing that the president and like 20 different people around him were tested positive for COVID. It's little things like that that kind of frustrate me when like Pence and Trump want to talk about what they did with China and the travel, but it's like, but basic things here in the States, you all refuse to take seriously. Something as simple as that, you give it a hard time. Like what she's asking for is just, it's exaggerated. It's like, it's no big deal. We don't need that. Like what, bruh, like stuff like that just bugs me. Yo, I don't understand it, man.
Just straight gaslighting is what that is. Yeah, it's really toxic. I mean, if the president of the United States just had it and was hospitalized, Like, let's not pretend like this is no big deal. Like, you would think that y'all would have learned.
Yeah. That last question from the student, or I don't know if she was a student, just some young person. I think it's really important to know that Donald Trump has fundamentally changed the way we talk about things in America. Like she's absolutely right, or Senator Harris is absolutely right that there was a time where people worked across the aisle, where people were, working together, and we could have like bipartisan fellowship and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But, Donald Trump has actively worked to make all of politics a zero-sum game on every single point imaginable. And it's so overwhelmingly toxic. And to pretend that he isn't, Pence is pretending as though the president isn't directly responsible for this climate. Like, oh, if you're listening to your local news, you might, as if the media is somehow solely responsible for the way that the president's rhetoric has polarized us even more. I think it's just really, really toxic. And like it's been said earlier, kind of gaslighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. They like take pride in that too. I think that's the thing that gets me is like, they say one thing, it feels, and like, then when it's made into a negative thing by the other side, they're like, oh, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. But it's like, you love Trump because he's crass. But then at the same time, the rhetoric that people are pointing out, like, is dividing America. Then they try to like shy away from it. Like, oh, no, we're not doing that. We're all one. And it's like, how can you be a fan of both? Like, how can you purport to be doing both? You cannot.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was on Ezra Klein's podcast where they talked about, I think he worked on George Bush's campaign and the things that went down with like the Supreme Court and how it came to Florida and how he kind of worked through that. And then how he worked in, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he worked in George Bush's presidency. And one of the things that they talked about was a number of Republicans were like, hey, Trump, you should bring this guy in to work with you because he does a good job of bipartisan agreement. He's an individual that when there are moments where it should be very clearly bipartisan, here's a guy that is a Republican but has some trust and respect by people that are on the left side. And they go on to say that Trump just kind of blew him off. Like, he joked about him. He mocked him. He just kind of threw him to the wind. And so this idea that like, after we're done debating, we can all come together. But it's like, well, no, like when there were clear, tangible moments where Trump could have done it, like he threw it out the window. And we see it again, like this week, he cancels all plans to work on another stimulus package and wants to focus more on his election in the Supreme Court case, judge rather. And it's like, well, what are we supposed to make of that information? Pence, it really feels like you're insulting our intelligence when you make comments like that, but your own president is doing counter everything you just stated. And it's not like we aren't watching him do it. We have evidence of him doing it for the last 4 years, not just like liberals and progressives, like Republicans have moved away from him because they're so exhausted of how you can't work with him. And it's like, I don't know how he thought that would have been a great answer when like receipts are all across the internet for us to pull up and just a blink of an eye.
I feel like the debate itself was evidence for the answer to that last question. It seems like Kamala's answers and the way that she was expressing herself and the points that she were making, to me, felt intentionally broader. Like the audience and group of people she was trying to catch, like the net that she was casting, was a lot broader than what Pence was doing. Like, listening to Pence, it's very clear who he's talking to. Like, he's not, like, he's talking to there's a very specific group of people that are going to want to hear the things that Pence is saying. And I feel like Kamala did a good job in not doing that.
I think that she was trying to speak to a wider range of ideologies. And I think that is testament to who will do a better job of at least making an attempt. I honestly don't know if it's possible, but making an attempt to reunite the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting conversation with that because both of these debates, I mean, that's what's frustrating about it is Trump is Trump. So he's just like this arrogant, interrupting. He's trying to troll. His trolling ended up losing him 10 points in polls. Like, I guess if that's a success for him. But Pence kind of took the same approach where neither one of them have any plan. They're not implementing any strategy for the country. They're trying to say what they've done works. And then they're trying to attack the ideas of Biden and Harris, but in reality, they're not. They're just attacking identity politics, trying to call them communists or that they want to ban fracking. Like I think I heard Mike Pence talk about fracking for 15 minutes, and he wanted to drill that point home, no pun intended. But like just this constant, your plans say this. And like, I'm literally just going to joebiden.com and looking like, oh yeah, it does say that he's trying to drop this tax plan and he wants to only raise taxes on the top 1% or 400K earning and more, like really simple things to do. And he's just like, no. And it's just the same way Trump did. He just did it with like maybe more manners. I guess it's like a guy that doesn't have his elbows on the table, but he's still like disrespecting your family at the dinner. Like, I guess it's kinder, but it's still lying and it's still manipulative nonsense. So it's like, cool, but you're still just spinning the same Trump rhetoric. It's just looks better, maybe packaged better. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when you even watching like the RNC, like there was so much effort put towards this like fake unifying force of like, oh, well, we're going to like come together and we're going to be one. But yet you're not tackling any of the real issues that Americans are talking about, like any of the needs that Americans have. So it just doesn't match up for me. Like I mean, obviously, but like, you know, they will say, oh yeah, you know, well, we told you everything we need to know, but then there are literally tapes with them having knowledge that they didn't share with the American people beforehand. Yeah. So it's like, it's just literal lies and packaged in this like effort, like they're putting all this effort towards being calm and being like, you know, oh, like our language is kind of flowery and, you know, all this stuff, we're going to unify and we have faith in the American people. But really what they're doing is saying, you know, as your leaders, we're actually not taking responsibility for the fact that we should have protected you, that we should have given you information. We have confidence that the American people will log on the internet and find out that the coronavirus is affecting Wuhan, China in a way that should make them afraid. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it doesn't match up. And I think that's the scariest and the most disturbing part about all of it for me is that people are accepting that rhetoric without understanding what you know, yet passive aggressive, what comes with that. You know, they're not understanding the underlying cause.
Yeah. I think it's important to note too that when they talk about unifying the American people, that is all dependent on who they define as being the American people. And we know that doesn't include everybody. So yeah, when they're getting up there and saying we're going to unify everybody, they might actually mean what they're saying, but they are excluding many Americans when they say that, because their definition of who is American and who is supposed to be there is not inclusive of everybody.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, no, really spot on. And I think, you know, the conversations about, you know, how to unite America are pretty interesting. I mean, you all know me. I'm a bit of a fatalist. I think that that's impossible. So it's like, I mean, for either side, you know, to be quite honest with you, just we're so far down the line of people creating and to your point right there, creating their own vision of what they believe America to be. And within their America, you have your selected sources, you have your selected information streams, and nothing else, you know, matters essentially. You know, nothing else is going to move or push you. I thought another really interesting part of the debate was the discussion around, well, it became a bit more of a discussion just around law enforcement and policing. They started by at least naming Breonna Taylor, which was good, but they sort of pivoted pretty quickly from that specifically. But it sort of hit me that, Pence and Trump, I think one of the reasons why it's so difficult for them on that particular issue even to concede like really any ground, because I feel like the question was sort of rooted in the fact of, hey, can you all concede that, something wrong happened here? We're not trying to get you to say, abolish the police or whatever the case may be. But, other than him kind of saying, oh, well, justice will be done with the George Floyd incident, which is to be seen. And who knows how much exactly they even believe that. I think they take a lot of their cues in governing from the way that law enforcement operate, I think the Bob Woodward moment was really telling, because were Woodward just to release those quotes from Trump in a book without us hearing the audio tape, then we could have fallen into this whole fake news, afactual conversation that they always have about saying, oh, Woodward's a failing journalist and he got access to me and he lied and cooked up stories, But since we have the tape, and I know Woodward knew that, and he knew that, once I release this joint, people are going to think that I'm lying, because they always think that people are lying on Trump. Now they really can't squirm out of it. And it's the same way law enforcement operates around these, whether it's their body cameras or these other tapes, and why they take so long to release them, because even if they do ultimately release them, you have months and months of this like garbage and subterfuge that they put out into the airways to make you think that there's no there. And then you could even see something with your own eyes and be like, oh, wait, that is wrong. But it's like 8 months down the line of them already telling you that it's not wrong. So it's like the American people are seeing stuff, but they've already been fed all this garbage. And so I see so many similarities between the way that they both operate, which is even more sobering and sad. And I guess the last thing that I'll say is, the choice couldn't be any more clear. And so that's one of the other reasons why it's a bit frustrating, because I'm imagining the worst case scenario coming down the line in real time while watching this and trying to understand how are people not seeing this gulf between the two choices that we have. You're already starting to hear the same stuff you heard in 2016. Oh, they gave us bad choices again, and all the both sides is in crap. I really don't want to hear it. But hopefully people do the right thing starting now. You don't have to wait till election day. I finally got my ballot in the mail and I started filling it out. So yeah, vote. Please vote, because this is getting crazy.
Yeah, it is very important for people to vote. And I think one of the things, kind of building off of your point, Nixon, that really kind of like just flabbergasted me is like the idea that systemic racism doesn't exist. I've never understood why white people especially aren't the first to jump on the train to say that systemic racism is a problem. It actually takes you personally off of the hook of being perceived as a racist and casts a much broader, less personal kind of net on the term racism. But these people, like supporters of Donald Trump, now have to be kind of like ideologically gerrymandered into this kind of like idea district of, well, if I support the president, then I also have to believe that systemic racism doesn't exist, which means I have to actively ignore all of the data that tells us that there is a systemic bias problem. Russia got to me.
It's all right. I was about to say they jumped on you. Yeah, that was a super frustrating moment for sure, Garrison. And it's just like, I don't know. I guess for so many white Americans in particular, there's still such a emotional connection to the word racism. And it's just like, you could literally almost say any other thing to them other than that. And you even sniff at that word. And it's just so weird because it's so ahistorical to believe that there's, you know, no such thing as institutional, structural, systemic racism. It's just like, it's weird to me. I don't know, but they grow up, you know, and our educational system in many ways is shaped in a way to tell them that that's the case, you know. So it's actually, I guess, not that confusing because you spend your entire life, maybe until you're an adult and you go to a college campus, depending on actually where you go. If you go somewhere like Liberty, oh boy, but it's like, then you might be confronted with something different. But by that time, you're already like 17, 18, and you think you know everything. Yeah. So Mike Pence is just a manifestation of that reality, sadly.
And I think he also knows, I mean, the reason why they don't see it as letting themselves off the hook, like what Garrison was saying, is because if your identity is tied to America, like, I think that's like a key difference between the people of color in America and white Americans. And that, like, I don't see America as being the core central part of who I am. I live here, but it's not like, I don't go around being like, I am an American. But like white people do that. Like and I feel like that tie to America as part of your identity makes it difficult then to look at saying, oh, America is racist systemically, as not personally attaching yourself to that. They can't look at it as like letting myself personally off the hook. And I feel like Pence and other people in his party understand that.
Yeah, and I would just kind of echo what Garrison pointed out earlier in the debate, where you see Pence make that kind of hypocritical statement where right after denying the existence of a systemic form of racism, he then points to the decisions that Kamala made when she was a DA, right? And then
that was wild.
This is what you did to people of color, which throughout the debate in my head, I'm like, this would have been a very easy method that Pence could have used to put Kamala on the defensive end. But you create a mute point when prior to making that statement, you deny the existence of any kind of racism in our country. So then when you try to throw it back at her, you're then like, you're trying to create like these two realities that like, they can't exist together. It's either it exists or it doesn't. But when you point to a political figure that uses their capital in a way that disproportionately harms a particular demographic, you are literally defining what you are saying doesn't exist. And that, I think, is, you know, like Michelle Alexander, she talks about like that dual reality that a lot of white Americans kind of live in, where like they can see that Black Americans live a different life, but at the same time they deny that reality in of itself. And so like these two things are kind of echoing against each other all the time, the way that they're viewing the way that life goes for people of color. And I think Pence notices that this is a real talking point that is going to attract a lot of white people, because they don't want to hear that the people who they're voting for are being part of that system that is disproportionately affecting people of color. But they will be open to hearing that someone on the other side is actually the villain. Like they're the ones that are actually being part of the problem, which is where whenever I have that conversation with people on social media or in face-to-face, I'm like, you're in the middle of this conversation, you're starting to name things that I actually agree with. You're naming things that some Democrats have done that I'm like, yes, that was a problematic policy that they implemented. You throwing that back at me is not going to be something it's not a gotcha moment. Like I agree with you on it. And so I've always noticed that whenever that happens, they're left with nothing to respond with. Their talking point goes out the window because for some reason they think that Black people view racism as a partisan issue. Like it's just Republicans that are racist. Right. And it's like, no, you're insulting my intelligence to think that I have not sat down and read and researched the things that both parties have done. It doesn't die down whenever it comes to someone that's red or blue. And you see that happen so often. Like Trump tried to do the same thing with Biden last time. And it's like, you're left at this point of like, I don't even think you understand the talking points you're trying to throw at me because you're not making any sense. I don't know, man.
Nah, it's good. This just popped up on my phone. Mike Pence is only black friend.
Nah, yo, Biden is petty, bro. Did y'all see the tweet that he posted? Biden tweeted flywillvote.com. That's the first.
Yo.
And then the second thing, he posted a picture of himself with a fly swatter. Like, you're okay, bro. Come on, man.
Yo. Yeah, his petty level is going up.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun, y'all. I think we're approaching 11 p.m.
Yep.
Affirmative.
It's 8 p.m. What you mean?
Oh yeah. We got it. Oh yeah, I was gonna say you could watch another finals game, but they got a little break.
Yeah, I'll probably watch the game 4 again.
Oh, on replay, right? Because it's live on the Sabbath, so you're gonna catch it. Actually, wait, not for you.
No, game 4 was yesterday. Game
5. My bad. Game 5 will be on Friday. Okay.
Yeah, on Friday. No, we do. When NBA season, I celebrate Sabbath differently.
Yeah.
Well, that's between you and God. Well, anyway, y'all. Any last thoughts or feelings before we jump on out? Man, it's our first 2-hour show. Wow.
Is it?
Well, it might not be actually. we
might have ran.
We be going over overtime.
Yeah, Jordan's not here for sure.
Right. If Jordan was on here, we would have been off.
He would have fell asleep at 10 p.m. We just have a feed of that dude in his bed. That'd be it.
This is what I'd like to leave you all with.
Bro, Pence is a clown. You can't take it seriously, dude. Even his flowers, like if you always
But is this thing on?
Literally.
Shout out to Donnell, always holding it down.
Yes, sir.
You, Nikki. Appreciate you watching with us.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Yeah, a lot of y'all stuck with us this whole time. This was fun. We appreciate all the interaction in the comments. I don't know. We'll have to really do an internal poll to see if you want to do this for the presidential debate. I don't know.
I would like to do it. I would like to do it.
I'm gonna just have Nipsey in the background.
Terrible when you watch it with others.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Community. You know what I mean?
Very true. Yeah. All right. Well, friends, you all have a good evening, and we will see you next week on the show.
Right.
And then we'll do a poll. Who would you rather host, me or Jordan Smart? Tell the truth. All right. Go vote and also vote on that poll.